Billie Eilish's latest controversy in February 2026 is unlike anything she's faced before, a storm that's hitting not just critics or tabloids, but fans who once adored her, insiders in her own management team, and a community whose ancestral land her mansion occupies. It all began at the 2026 Grammys, when she stepped onto the stage during a high-profile moment and delivered a line that instantly divided the room. "Nobody is illegal on stolen land," followed by a knowing smile and a confident walk-off. The immediate reaction in the arena was mixed, cheers, silence, and a few uncomfortable glances, but the real wave hit online within minutes. By the time the broadcast ended, her comment was trending across multiple platforms, though not in the way her team had hoped. While some fans defended her as brave and necessary, a quieter, more insistent backlash was forming, one that couldn't be brushed aside. Within 48 hours, members of the Tongva community, the indigenous people of the Los Angeles basin, issued a public statement calling attention to the fact that her own mansion sits on their ancestral land. That moment reframed the narrative entirely. Her speech stopped being just a political statement and became a far messier question of whether she was advocating for a cause she hadn't fully confronted in her own life. And the critique wasn't coming from angry conservatives, but from people with a direct, personal stake in the issue. The controversy escalated because the Tongva were the very community Billie Eilish appeared to be speaking for, turning a Grammy moment into a full-blown PR storm. Within 48 hours, her management reportedly held emergency meetings discussing damage control, whether she should issue a clarifying statement, and how to handle the interviews already scheduled. Panic is often overused in celebrity gossip, but sources say that word accurately described the mood in those rooms. Billie and her brother Finneas, however, reportedly refused to walk anything back, a choice that transformed a controversy into a crisis, as it became about an artist valuing being right over being strategic. Then, Finneas worsened matters. While the team scrambled to contain the fallout, he went online and blamed the backlash on angry old white men. That remark may have satisfied fans, but for anyone with legitimate concerns, or for the Tongva community whose statement was effectively dismissed, it was less a bridge and more a slammed door. The comment went viral instantly, shared triumphantly by supporters but used by critics as proof that neither sibling was willing to engage with feedback, deepening the perception that the situation had spiraled entirely out of control. Notably, the Tongva community was not made up of angry old white men, which made Finneas' deflection look even worse. And amidst all the uproar, one detail got largely lost. The 2026 Grammys were already facing a ratings problem, with viewership having declined for years. And the network had been hoping culturally significant moments like Billie Eilish's appearance would boost interest. Instead, her comment hijacked the news cycle in a way that did little to excite audiences for next year. And while some entertainment journalists noted it did drive short-term online engagement more than the performances themselves, engagement fueled by division isn't the same as buzz that sells. Records or concert tickets, it's one thing for people to talk about you, another for them to care about what you do next. But the Grammys fallout and Finneas' viral response were only the setup, because inside Billie's inner circle, her team was quietly managing not just external optics, but a plan that had been in the works for weeks, involving a television appearance, a potential move overseas, and a statement insiders say could completely upend the situation, specifically the Ireland announcement that no one was talking about yet. According to reports, in the weeks after the Grammys, Billie Eilish and Finneas were working on a plan to appear on Jimmy Kimmel Live in March 2026, not just to promote upcoming projects, but to announce that they would be leaving the United States for an extended period. The stated reason was creative. With Irish and Scottish heritage on their father's side, they planned to film a featurette in Ireland tied to Billie's ongoing Hit Me Hard and Soft tour, including a 3D concert film already in development, giving the project a personal, roots-driven dimension that could work well artistically. On paper, it seemed like a thoughtful decision, but the timing made it impossible to separate from the Grammys fallout. After making a politically charged statement, being publicly called out by the Tongva community, and watching Finneas double down online, a national television announcement of an international move looked inevitably reactive. Critics framed it as running from the storm, fans who had defended her wavered, and detractors felt vindicated. Complicating matters, her team reportedly begged her to reconsider how she made the announcement, arguing that framing it on Kimmel as a departure would turn a personal, creative decision into a political statement in front of millions, giving the story more oxygen. Alternatives were suggested, like filming in Northern California's redwood forest to achieve the same emotional and visual impact while preserving the roots angle through the music itself, but Billie and Finneas reportedly ignored that advice. On top of that, logistical issues loomed. Staff, managers, and crew built around a domestic operation faced real anxiety over a long-term or semi-permanent international relocation, adding another layer of complexity to a situation already spiraling out of control. The fallout wasn't just a PR problem, it became a business infrastructure problem. Reports indicated that Billie Eilish and Finneas were even considering a second television appearance on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert to continue discussing the political dimension of their decision, suggesting this might be less about art, heritage, or a creative project, and more a deliberate, sequential media strategy to keep the conversation alive. That raises the question, is it brave or reckless? Billie has spent years cultivating a fan base drawn to her authenticity, but authenticity and strategy are very different, and when her team is in emergency meetings while she schedules national announcements of her departure, the line between speaking from the heart and managing a crisis blurs in ways that are difficult to undo. The stakes are especially high because her 3D concert film tied to the Hit Me Hard and Soft tour represents a project worth hundreds of millions, relying on wide audience appeal, screenings in major chains, and event cinema positioning in a market struggling to fill seats outside of franchises. Even a partial dip in attendance could hurt opening weekend numbers and create a narrative difficult to reverse, as you don't need every fan to turn against her, just enough to pass on tickets. Reports also suggested that director James Cameron had been briefed on the situation, not in a dramatic stop-the-presses fashion, but in the routine way major productions monitor anything that could affect their investment, underscoring just how intertwined the controversy had become with her professional and financial ecosystem. Nobody in Hollywood panics about celebrity controversy more than the people with 8-figure marketing budgets tied to a release date, and the situation with Billie Eilish is particularly delicate because her audience skews young and passionate, usually a huge commercial asset since they show up opening weekend, buy merchandise, and generate organic social buzz, but that same audience can pivot sharply when they feel an artist has crossed a line. The Tongva land acknowledgement struck at the core of the fans who care most about social justice, people who had championed her precisely for her thoughtful engagement with such issues. The perception of hypocrisy, fair or not, is one of the most corrosive forces in celebrity culture. The potential Ireland trip complicates matters further, because a headline framed as Billie Eilish flees to Europe after Grammys backlash writes itself and will color reviews, interviews, and the context of every future statement she makes. Her team reportedly resisted the Kimmel announcement not to silence her, but to protect the business they had built together. Yet Billie and Finneas prioritized speaking their mind over risk management, a choice that, depending on your view of celebrity activism and authentic self-expression, either positions her as the artist the world needs, or as a cautionary tale about unedited self-expression. What makes this moment unique is the collision of factors. She is a young artist whose brand is raw sincerity, not legacy goodwill, and when something she says seems inconsistent with that brand, audience reaction is sharper than for a more ironic or detached persona. The Tongva land response hit hard because land acknowledgement resonates deeply with the generation that made her famous, and invoking stolen land at the Grammys while owning property on that land compounds, rather than diminishes the irony. Finneas's angry old white men comment further entrenched a defensive posture, building a wall where dialogue might have existed and extending the controversy rather than containing it, leaving the fallout set to ripple further than most observers yet realize. The Ireland announcement, if it happens as reported, could test whether Billie Eilish's audience chooses to follow her narrative or reject it, as the fan base is currently divided, and divided audiences can swing either way depending on what happens next. Some celebrities survive this kind of moment by staying quiet, letting tension settle, and returning later with a project so strong it overshadows past controversy, while others push publicly and either rebuild their reputation or deepen the problems. The planned Jimmy Kimmel Live appearance in March, which Billie and Finneas reportedly pursued despite their team's objections, will reveal which path she is taking. From one Grammy statement, she has sparked a public indigenous land controversy, thrown her team into quiet crisis mode, announced an international relocation, and set up what may become one of the most watched Kimmel episodes of 2026. Whether she emerges stronger depends entirely on what she says next and how she says it, because authenticity doesn't always equal strategy, and right now those forces are pulling in very different directions, leaving fans and critics alike wondering whether standing by her beliefs will solidify her legacy or cost her more than she realizes. Nobody in Hollywood panics over celebrity controversy quite like those whose 8-figure marketing budgets hinge on a release date, and Billie Eilish's situation is especially fraught because her audience is young, passionate, and commercially influential, showing up opening weekend, buying merchandise, and driving social buzz. But that very audience can turn sharply if they sense a misstep. The Tongva land acknowledgement struck at the core of fans invested in social justice, people who had long celebrated her for thoughtful engagement, and the perception of hypocrisy, whether fair or not, is one of the most corrosive dynamics in celebrity culture. The potential Ireland trip makes the stakes higher, since a headline framed as Billie Eilish flees to Europe after Grammys backlash writes itself, coloring reviews, interviews, and every future statement. Her team reportedly resisted the Kimmel announcement not to silence her, but to safeguard the business they built together. Yet Billie and Finneas prioritize speaking out over risk management, a choice that positions her as either the authentic artist the world demands or a cautionary example of unfiltered expression. This moment is unique because her brand is defined by raw sincerity, not legacy goodwill, so any perceived inconsistency hits harder than it would for someone with a more ironic or detached persona. The Tongva land response resonated sharply because that generation deeply values such acknowledgments, and invoking stolen land while owning property there compounds the irony. Finneas's angry old white men remark intensified defensiveness, erecting barriers where dialogue might have been possible, and extending the controversy far beyond what most observers yet realize. The Ireland announcement, if it unfolds as reported, could reveal whether Billie Eilish's audience follows her narrative or turns away, as her fan base is currently split and divided groups can swing either way depending on the next moves. Some celebrities weather such moments by staying quiet, letting tensions settle, and returning later with a project strong enough to overshadow controversy, while others go public, either repairing their reputation or deepening the fallout. The planned Jimmy Kimmel Live appearance in March, which Billie and Finneas reportedly pushed for despite their team's objections, will signal which route she's taking. From a single Grammy statement, she has sparked a public indigenous land debate, thrown her team into crisis mode, announced an international relocation, and set up what may become one of 2026's most watched Kimmel episodes. Her next words and how she delivers them will determine whether she emerges stronger, because authenticity doesn't always align with strategy, and right now those forces are tugging in opposite directions, leaving fans and critics alike questioning whether standing by her convictions will cement her legacy or cost more than she anticipates.